Martuccio. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. As you all know, we're here tonight as a statutory city, meaning we don't have a charter yet, if ever, and we must abide by the Ohio Revised Code and the rules that you have all passed tonight as a direct result of the Revised Code. The Revised Code provides in section 73104 that you have to choose a president pro tempore by tomorrow. Within 10 days of the beginning of your term, which began on January 1st, you have to choose a president pro tempore. The reason for that is, in the absence of the president of council, who's an executive officer of the city elected separately, in that person's absence, you need to have someone who can take council over. And that is called a president pro tempore under state law. Under our rules, it's called a vice president. The next position you'll vote for is the first vice president, who should take over in the event of an absence of the first vice president. We all know that, but that leads to our rules now, and here's where we get to the meat of it. You have the right to pass your own rules on how to make this election, because the Revised Code is silent. The Ohio Revised Code does not tell you how to elect your president pro tempore. It only tells you that you have to elect one. Your rules start with number 5. Provide that the officers of council shall be the vice president, parentheses, majority leader, close paren, and first vice president of council, paren, assistant majority leader, close paren. These offices shall be elected at the first meeting of the new term of council, which you're doing. Candidates for such office shall be nominated and seconded and voted for by roll call vote, which you've done, and no person shall be elected unless he or she receives a majority vote of council's members. That begs the question, what is a majority vote of council's members? Our codified ordinances provide that council's membership is comprised of 12 persons, 9 wards and 3 at large. We have 12 members. A majority is defined in Rule 40. The majority of members is defined as 7 votes. It says majority of members dash 7 votes. In the case of a tie, the president may vote and constitute the 7th vote for purposes of adopting any matters which require a majority of members. The next rule I'll turn to is Rule 39, and it gets to the abstention. This is a sequential order. I'm trying to speak slowly and enunciate carefully so you can follow my answer. Rule 39 involves voting procedures. Paragraph A, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. Upon the presiding officer ordering roll call, it is the duty of every member who has an opinion on the question to express it by his or her vote. It's the duty of every member who has an opinion to express it by his or her vote, which shall be a yea or a nay. In this case, obviously, we had to make it a name call, which was converted to yeas and nays. In the center of this paragraph is an important sentence. It reads, an abstention vote, which is kind of an oxymoron because Robert's Rules of Order says that an abstention is not a vote. An abstention is not a vote. But our rule says an abstention vote shall be excluded from the count in determining the number of votes necessary to either adopt or defeat a question. Let me say that again slowly. An abstention vote shall be excluded from the count in determining the number of votes necessary to either adopt or defeat a question. I believe that because Rule 5 speaks to a vote, let me get the exact wording here. Rule 5 says no person should be elected unless he or she receives a majority vote of council's members. I believe we have 12 members. I believe a majority vote constitutes 7. Under that interpretation, as well as Rule 40.1, which says a majority is 7. Now I know in some circles this language is debated about what does it mean when an abstention excludes from the count the number of votes necessary to adopt or defeat. Robert's Rules, I've been combing Robert's Rules of Order, which our rules provide. If we have any silence on an issue, we look to Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order essentially say that if the vote required is the majority of the membership, an abstention is the same effect as a no. So given that, I'm doing the math in my interpretation to say we're at 6, 5, and 0, which is a no, which doesn't count either way. I'm going to offer you as my legal advice the opinion that we need 7 votes because of what I've quoted so far. I understand reasonable minds can differ. I understand, I'm about to mention this one sentence that's a little bit confusing. We all know that sometimes legal issues go to places like the Supreme Court of the United States where we have very learned people, and they'll split 5 to 4. They're learned people, they're experienced, they like each other, but they differ. The Ohio Supreme Court has 7 justices, and many issues that go to them come out 4 to 3 because good, learned people differ. I'm on the side of 7, and I understand that it can be reasonably implied or inferred from this sentence, an abstention vote shall be excluded from the count in determining the number of votes necessary to either adopt or defeat a question. I understand some of you may say, okay, someone abstained, so that should be used as an exclusion. We have 12 members, one's an abstention, that leaves 11. A majority of 11 is 6. I understand that's an inference that some people can draw. I'm choosing not to draw that based on Rule 40.1 and the fact that I guess I'm being a strict constructionist. In my thinking, you have 12 members, and a majority means one more than half. I'm old-fashioned. I think that a majority leader should be someone who's elected by a majority of your body, which is 7. And I understand that some people would feel that in the rules that we're about to review, that maybe we should adopt that. I mean, we should look at that more closely and adapt rules that are cleaner and clearer in the future about leadership. I understand that, and I would be happy to help in that endeavor. I understand some people feel that when you pass legislation that's controversial and has a lot of money in it, you should not use the abstention vote because you could have the effect of having 3 people being a majority on a very important piece of legislation. If, say, 3 people are absent, 4 people abstain, I can understand how, in that case, 3 people might be considered a majority. So that's my reasoning. Again, reasonable people can draw other inferences from that one sentence, but I'm offering you, Mr. Chair, my friend, I respectfully offer you my opinion that I think 7 constitutes a majority in this case. And you may say, well, then what happens next? Historically, this is a weird area. You may recall from history that Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson had to stand for election 36 times for Vice President of the United States. 36 times. And as a result of that, an amendment to the U.S. Constitution was made. Hence my reference to maybe some different rules in the future. You have choices. If you can offer other opinions to the chair, he's the presiding officer. I'm not a judge, I'm not a court. I'm offering you my advice. If the presiding officer chooses to do differently, that's his option. You are still allowed to go into executive session. You can call for reconsideration of this vote after you have any more discussion. You can go into executive session not to vote, but to consider the appointment of this public position. This is a public official. Another option, state code says you have to have a president pro tempore. You have to have someone who's able to take over and lead council. If you can't resolve the issue of your vice president tonight, perhaps you can resolve the issue of your vice president, perhaps not, but that person can be considered pro tempore, I believe. At any rate, the law says you have to have a leader by tomorrow, by January 10th. And that's my opinion. Thank you for listening.